Hello again, everybody. I'm Dean O'Neill.
And I'm Nick Robinson.
Nick, we've had a wonderful series here. Getting ready to wind it down, the last two, but much to say about your trip. And you did a wonderful job and have done a wonderful job of witnessing something and showing us or telling us what you've witnessed.
Yeah, and again, it's something that how do we as a church maybe get on the ground somewhere and learn about something in person? Maybe not immigration, but
right?
Like how can we go somewhere, see something, and be changed by it, and bring that change back with us to be agents of God here in Columbus?
Sure, and it's one of the reasons why we named our podcast On the Ground.
Yeah,
because hopefully we do more things on the ground, and we are able to let everybody know, or at least let everybody participate, and then maybe they let us know. Mm-hmm. We just never know.
Well, yeah, I talked to somebody who's going to a wedding in India over in December. And I was like, we got to do an on the ground podcast about a wedding in India. I mean, it's not a Christian wedding, but we have people from India who live in Columbus.
Sure.
And I think it's a Hindu or a Hindi. I'm not sure. I don't know the right words, but I think it's a Hindu wedding. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, that might not teach us a lot about Christian marriage or weddings. Maybe in contrast, we can learn some things. But wouldn't it be interesting if the people of Asbury and the people who listened to it had this picture of what our neighbors are going through when they're doing a wedding, and what it's like in India and all these, because some people in Asbury have been to India many times because they've gone there for work. Sure. But I think it'd be an interesting thing to hear about maybe.
This has been probably 30 years ago when I would shoot video of anything and everything, and I dabbled into wedding videos and decided not to go that direction, but there was I did an Indian wedding. It's a 3-day event. Yeah. So it's not like you go and you set up and you lock down and you get the kiss and they dance down the aisle.
Yeah, because a wedding, if a wedding ceremony goes longer than 30 minutes in the United States, I think people start checking their watches.
I think you're right.
I can do one in 10 minutes if you don't want any bells and whistles.
That's wonderful. So anyway, yes.
So today we're going to start moving towards thinking about policy. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not going to be suggesting any policy,
right?
But I have some opinions on some things that I think are worth thinking about, worth talking about. Sure. So first, I just want to say that in our discussions in politics and in many things lately, oftentimes it seems like we devolve into name calling first. Right. So it's about my side versus your side, or you even get some both sides. People are like, well, I don't like either side. Both sides are wrong. And so we even default into this world where there's only two sides to choose from. And there's only two sets of talking points to choose from. Sure. And that's not healthy for our discourse. That's not healthy for the way that we talk to each other. It's not actually all that practical for solving problems that we have. And so I want us to think about that the left and the right don't have the only voice for the issues and the problems that we face in the United States, in the world, and in the church. That ultimately, immigration is a political thing, but it does not have to be a partisan thing. And it's and these issues that we face are not, if we want to address them in healthy, constructive ways, being partisan is not the way that's going to lead us most clearly in that direction.
I totally agree. And to expand on that, I would even go as far as, I oversimplify things. I say you get a committee of Congress, which you already have, but you get Democrats or Republicans in a room and say, you guys have to come up with this. It's not about Republican or Democrat. You have to do a bipartisan thing here, because immigration is just immigration. It's the way it is.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond immigration. I think some of these things, like healthcare, is a big issue right now. There's all kinds of big issues in the world, in our country. And I told someone the other day, I think we just need some engineers in office for a while. I don't want engineers to rule the world forever, but we need some problem solvers and not politicians in offices.
No, it's a great thing. And by the way, we do this on the brink of a shutdown that hasn't been resolved yet.
Oh yeah,
we're sitting here talking about partisan, and it's not even happening right now. So there's such a long way to go. So we don't have to get into that. So
and so I think the church has not been good at this. The church has not always been good at being a nonpartisan place where we're focusing only on loving our neighbors. And, there's a lot of churches that you can go to and be like, well, that's a Democrat church, or this is a Republican church, or this is a church where we just don't talk about the issues because we know we'll be in a fight about it.
Right.
Or this is a church where we mostly focus on loving each other and we don't worry about the outside world a whole lot. Or so there's these different levels of engagement. And I think the church has an opportunity to give a gift to the world of being a place where we think deeply about hard issues and we have honest dialogue using data, using our values to try to find answers rather than listening to news sources that and politicians that benefit off of driving fear.
Right. I am a journalist. And by trade, and I can tell you that journalism has taken a back seat to media. That's two different things. That's two different. There are two different things. There's media, and then there's journalism, and there are nothing but media networks right now.
And I think there's probably individuals who would love to be journalists.
Sure,
but it's like there's a lot of doctors who would love to just do medicine. There's a lot of teachers who would love to just teach. Right. But there are sometimes economic forces, sometimes invented economic forces, sometimes trying to maximize profits that go into decision making more than not too many people are maximizing profits off of teaching, but
still though,
I know what my wife makes. So
yeah, exactly.
But it's still very political at times.
Right.
So that's what I want to start with, is this encouragement for us to be people who are starting with prayer, are starting with praying for the situation, are starting to try to see things. We're starting maybe with God's perspective, with a Christ-like mindset, rather than I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or I'm an anything.
Sure.
Let's be Christians first, thoughtful people solving problems. The other thing after that is there's a Wesleyan principle in the general rules, and the first one is do no harm. And so on this trip, and ever since this trip, that's been rattling around in my brain. Like, what does a immigration policy or process that does no harm look like? And to me, reducing harm is inherently valuable.
Right.
Not hurting people is a good thing.
Right.
Harm has a way of trickling through systems, and even like, oh well, we're going to institute this, and so one of the big causes for immigration in the United States is that some of these countries have been destabilized because of the interventions of the United States in the past, particularly around things like communism. Oh, we're going to support the side that is not, that we think is not communist. So because that was the Cold World War back then, right? Like that was the situation that the world was in. That was what people were doing, for whatever reason, and there have been lasting consequences from that. So some of these countries have been destabilized because of the United States and other countries' interventions.
Right.
And so I'm going to try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt and say, originally that the ideal was to not do harm, but was to do as most good as possible.
Sure.
But there was harm that was done that has trickled through decades of situations there. And so when I'm thinking about immigration policy for today, for the future, for processes that we're going to follow, how do we do no harm? And the answer is part of the answer is we're going to have to do at least a little bit of harm. And there is no such thing as an immigration policy that leaves everyone smiling and happy and meets every single person's need in the world. Like it's impossible to do. So we're going to have to be minimizing harm rather than doing no harm.
Correct. And when you speak of that and harm, I will say that when the Biden administration came up with the app, great idea. I'm not kidding. It's a great idea, but there were flaws in it, and humans make flaw. Humans are flawed people. So I mean, there are flaws in it, and that caused this influx of immigration to come over, and That's why it's no longer there. So I'm not saying it was bad, but I'm just saying there was flaws in it. And now, just like you said, you witnessed.
Yeah, but even you saying there's a flaw is, I mean, that's a perspective. Some people might say that there were no flaws.
That's a perspective.
Or maybe the flaws were they didn't let enough people in. Like there are different perspectives that we might bring to that. And so that's why I think we also need to counteract it with like our values.
Sure.
We've talked about in this series already that there aren't a lot of migrants at the border right now because of this change in everything. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's both things probably.
Right.
But we're not. One thing that is true is that we can't hear the stories of the migrants right now because they're not there to be listened to.
Sure.
They're back home,
right,
living in whatever situation that is.
But you can, the church can be, like you said, nonpartisan. John Garland, the guy that you talked to, I mean, he just worries about what he wants to accomplish and help immigration or help immigrants. He doesn't ask them what their affiliation is. He doesn't ask. Probably didn't ask you what your affiliation was. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's just he sees it. This is what his God is telling him to do, and he's doing it.
Yeah, and so for me, like that is such an admirable position to be in, to like be meeting the needs of the people in front of you. I think that is an immediately Christian response to see somebody. Mm-hmm. It's a good Samaritan response, right? Like here's someone's needs, and now I'm going to take care of them. I'm maybe not asking a lot of questions. The parable, the story of the Good Samaritan, they don't ask a lot of questions. He just helps the person. There's no one to answer the questions.
Right.
You just help the person in need in front of you.
You just can't come in. More often than not, you can't come into the country without a plan. If you do come into the country without a plan, then it gets to be so hard for those people that come in. I think that. We just had a garage sale, and I think the couple of days before the garage sale, we had some Afghan refugees that were taking up residence in Columbus, and we were helping them out. I mean, you have to be. I mean,
well, man, and so a plan again works if you're entering the country in a way that's planned. If you're fleeing, so Jesus was a refugee. Jesus, when he was born, according to Scripture, Herod found out about this threat to his power and decides to kill all the little boys under a certain age. Mm-hmm. And the story goes that Jesus fled with his family to Egypt. Jesus did not have a plan. He did not have an app. He did not have documents.
Right.
It was a different world. It's a different time. All of that's worth knowing. But also reminds us that not everyone is moving across borders because they have had the time to rationally think about everything.
Right.
They may have been living in a state of crisis, and they're fleeing. They're running away, and they're running towards something that feels safer.
Sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, because there's a good chance I can be wrong. But didn't Joseph had to go back to Bethlehem? He was in another place, and he had to go to Bethlehem because that's where he was from. There was some sort of a
so he was in Nazareth. There was the census, and so everyone went to their hometown in Bethlehem, or not. I mean, not everyone from Bethlehem, but he was from Bethlehem. Went back to Bethlehem for the census. That's why he was ostensibly in town, for that fulfillment of prophecy.
Sure,
and then they probably went back to Nazareth, and then Magi probably showed up, and then fleeing and all those kinds of things.
But still, what I'm saying is there was a reason why he had to go he was in Nazareth and he had to go to Bethlehem, right?
Yeah, but he didn't cross any borders. That was all in Israel.
Sure.
From Nazareth to Bethlehem.
Yeah. But again, it's another thing of government saying, "Hey, you have to go here to there," and all this stuff.
Oh, for sure. And then they traveled apparently without a plan because there was nowhere for them to stay. According to Scripture.
Right.
And so there's the good that we try to do is often intertwined with harm, with evil. There are many things that are good, that are worth doing, but then there are also consequences too that are not ideal. And so in all of this policy making, I think we have to set out with this idea of not harming people, but also knowing that as all the good that we try to do, it will not be perfect.
Right. And that's well said, man. Really.
And so we need to start naming other values that we have. For me, as a Christian, love of neighbor is a value. And then we start, well, who's my neighbor? And then we start looking at the parable of the Good Samaritan. We start looking at some scripture. And I think there's just some things, honestly, about the United States, like some things that we need to be honest about. Because some people will even talk about, well, right now, like migrant farming is really under the gun. And we're like almost like wistful, like, well, we need the migrant farmers. So there are parts of our economy that depends on the labor of other people. And at the same time, so that labor is providing good things, but it's also a challenge in itself in many ways, one of which is so some people were happy to come and do that work for the money that it paid because it was more than they could make somewhere else. But also a lot of migrants live in terrible conditions, and dangerous conditions. So even this thing that some people look at as kind of like, this was a good thing. We need this thing. And it benefited some people, and it benefited the economy as a whole in many ways. But it still had people were suffering as part of it, as well as some of the good things. So the good and the bad were still intertwined there.
Right.
And people might slice that pie differently. Like they might say different parts of it were good, and they might disagree on which parts of it were bad, or they might say, well, I'm just a realist. This is just how things were.
Right. And let me say this. This is nothing that has been, when you talk about migrant workers, this is nothing. This is something that's been doing for years, beyond years. I lived in Newcastle, Indiana. I was raised in Newcastle, Indiana. I moved from Columbus to Newcastle in 1973. All right. Well, I remember Newcastle having a lot of Hispanic people. All right. And but then all of a sudden they're gone. And so I asked my dad, what's the deal there? Well, there was a Brooks ketchup company up in Newcastle, and they farmed tomatoes, and these Hispanics came all the way from Mexico to work the fields to pick tomatoes. Yeah. So this is nothing new. I mean, so
and. Just because it's not new doesn't mean we shouldn't reflect on it and just to think about what does fairness really look like? Are we extreme practicalists, realists, where the economy is what the economy is and the invisible hand will direct it all, or are we people who have some kind of sense of what a livable wage or a living condition should be for people who we are benefiting from they're benefiting from their labor, but we are benefiting from their labor as well. And so we have to look at what does it mean to love our neighbors? What are our values? The United States also, many countries in the West are starting to have birth rates that mean the population is going to shrink in those places.
Right.
In my rudimentary understanding of economics is that shrinking populations make for very challenging economic conditions. We think of economies as things that need to grow, and growth provides benefits for the people who are part of the economy. And when the birth rate slows and the population contracts, then it's hard for economies to thrive and to keep growing. And the United States is one of those places where the birth rate we're like near that situation. And so immigration is one of the things that's keeping our population growing. Again, that leads us to a lot of questions.
Sure.
Is limitless growth the thing that we're really looking for? Is there a certain pace of growth that we think is optimal for our society? Because one thing is if the United States had completely open borders and we added 1 billion people in the next year who had immigrated in here, our system also can't survive that. Our country, we don't have houses for people. You can't add that many. It would be impossible. And so what is the growth rate or the entrance rate that helps provide a standard of living here, but also is still attractive to people who live here or that people might want to come here? What can our system really sustain? I don't hear people talking about that.
Right.
I don't hear people saying those kinds of things. So I think there are some practical things and then values that we need to name too as we try to work on the practical problems, but then still be the kinds of people that we want to be.
Sure. How many times do we hear of an immigrant from another country that is in the United States, possibly undocumented, but they're like a surgeon. They were a surgeon in their country, but here they're a real estate agent, or they're working at a factory, a janitor, or something like that. I mean, that has to get better too. We have to know who is coming into our country that can thrive, because that's what it's all about, I think.
Yeah, so you're saying that if we knew people's skills and could utilize their skills better, then that would help our country thrive more too, and help the individual thrive.
I think so. Yeah. And so there's definitely, and I say that word again, and I'll take it, but there's definitely flaws in once they get over here. I think we need to be better hosts, I think.
Well, and that's one of the hospitality is an ancient value that's part of our tradition of helping people be at home and making space for them to belong and to be comfortable. I mean, the Old Testament is full of hospitality language and hospitality stories, and the judgment for the lack of hospitality as well. I mean, the lack of hospitality. You talk about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right.
People want to talk about other things, but the lack of hospitality is probably the real sin that was committed there.
Right. It's I mean, it's worth more than 30 minutes for sure. But I think that being able to look at the implications that are involved, like we're doing today with immigration, at least I think I agree with you. I think the church can do more. I think the church can do more than, as a whole, could do more.
Yeah. What are the things that you want the church to do?
I think that probably, I think that to try to take the politics out of it and just do what we are taught to do from the Bible and Christ and just move forward. Is it going to be perfect? No, it's not going to be perfect. But I just think we have to start eliminating things that just get in our way. Yeah. And I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry, but I don't want to cause anything, but I think sometimes politics needs to get out of it.
You always say that. You say, I don't want to cause anything, but
I do. I know.
And I mean, politics it's always going to be political, because politics is not just voting, but it's the organization of our life together.
Right.
So in seminary, I took a class called polity, which is all about the rules that govern the United Methodist Church. Like the politics is our life together. And so as we kind of start wrapping up this discussion, part of this is me asking us, who do we want to be? Like, do we want to be people who are split by partisan divisions, or do we want to be people who see a problem and solve a problem?
Sure.
Do we want to be a people who are allow fear to dictate our lives, fear of the other, fear of our neighbor? Or do we want to be people who love our neighbor and even love our enemies in the ways that we can? Are we people who want to look at data and hear stories and assemble from that some kind of policy that makes sense, and when that policy has its problems, to iterate on it and see what we can fix? Are we people who can be flexible? Are we people who can see someone who doesn't look like us or think like us and think, man, I'm lucky to be around that person. I love that person even though they are not like me. And so as I ask all of those questions, perhaps it is obvious to the listener what kind of person I want to be. Right. I want to be the kind of person who does not get distracted by the loud voices on the TV or the radio or the TikTok app or wherever you're hearing your loud voices. I want to be someone who can hold someone in my heart and love them, hear their story, be moved by it, and look at the data and the reality and think about, what really makes sense. And knowing that people are going to disagree with me on what makes sense. And so then we come to some kind of compromise. And to me, it's always like, how generous would it be if we're like, okay, we'll compromise and we're going to try this and then we're going to measure the outcomes. And then we're going to see what happens, and we'll iterate on it again. Because what immigration policy has experienced lately are wild swings based on who's in power.
Exactly.
And I don't know that that's helpful. I think
correct. You're right. You're right.
I've been someone who follows Apple for a while, and the Apple is famous for not always coming out with the hottest, newest thing.
Right.
But they've had this thing called the iPhone for a long time, which was pretty hot and new when it first came out. But slowly iterating on it year after year after year has turned it into what's really a mature device. It's feature complete more or less. It works well more or less. Sometimes it feels like it's getting more frustrating to me, but that's probably because I'm getting old. Like, how can slow iteration lead us to a place of prosperity and flourishing and loving one another, where these wild swings are disrupting our ability to actually care for our neighbors?
Right. Well, I will say this, that when I said that I think that the church needs to do more, I truly believe that. And I want everyone to know out there that this is mostly a congregational podcast. You are welcome to email me and say, hey, what if you did this or this? And I will pass it on to Nick, because I'm the moderator. I don't know things. Nick, I'm helping Nick along to tell us his story. But I've had people come up to me and say, hey, it's great and everything like that. And I've had people come up to me and say, hey, wow, you should have asked this and this. So we are not keeping this closed. I mean, you guys can write us notes, write us emails, whatever. Come up to us after church.
We have one more planned episode, so if you have any questions, let us know. And if you hear this after the last episode, if we end up with a bunch of questions, we can record a 9th episode. So please let us know your thoughts and your questions. And I want to give you all, our listeners, homework for this episode. What are your values? Can you name your values when it comes to our life together, whether it's immigration or whether it's how you treat your neighbor? Because I don't think our values are all going to be the same. So I'm really interested to see and to hear what people's values are. So let us know.
All right. Let's end in prayer.
Yeah. Gracious God, we thank you for this chance to think about our neighbors, to think about our values. Help us to be people who do no harm in our daily living, to be people who are sensitive to the needs of others and who are just seeking not to hurt people. Help us to also be people who do good, who are willing to work toward solutions with the people who will sit at the table with us, who see the same problems, who are moved by the same situations. Help us to hear stories and have broken hearts when they need to be broken, to have inspired hearts when they need to be inspired, to see people for the fullness of who they are, and to also be people who are practical, who are wise, who look at data, who look at trends, who are able to utilize our reason and our rationality as we try to create a place of flourishing for people, and a place where we can follow and love you with all that we do. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
For Nick Robinson, I'm Dean O'Neill, and you've been on the ground at the border. Have a good day.